Hi guys, and welcome to a new Zoom chat today. I'm very happy to have Neil Powell with me. Neil, thanks for being with us, and how have you been keeping in lockdown?
Yeah, no, thanks, Greg. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, it's been interesting, and I think for most of the parts challenging, but I think for me, um, a lot of positives. I really enjoy the time at home. It's something that we don't often get especially when you're in the season and you 2.5 weeks away from home, and then 2.5 weeks at home, and then you're back on a plane 2.5 weeks later. So it's great spending time with the family. It's great having time for yourself as well. Reading books, starting to exercise again. Stuff that you normally don't get time for when you're in the season and in the busy times.
For sure. Neil, I just want to start maybe looking at the transition into the new season. We obviously kicked off at the end of last year, and that feels like a long time ago. But just looking at the 2018-2019 season, perhaps fair to say there were a few teething problems and a bit of a rebuilding phase that you guys went through there. But just reflect first on that one, and then how you transitioned into the new season, and just what the feelings and confidence levels were like.
Yeah, I think that 2018, 2019 was definitely a difficult season for me as a coach. I think we had a fair amount of success before that 2018, 2019 season, but we knew going into that season that we're gonna be into that phase where we're gonna maybe let some of the senior players go, and then obviously need to get some of the young men some game time to develop them and make sure that we get them experience for the 2020 Olympics. So, and I think that's also why in the beginning of the season we set ourselves a target of finishing top four. So, and we didn't say we want to finish fourth. We said we want to finish top four. So that's what people sometimes misunderstand. They think because you say top four, you want to get fourth. But our goal for that 2018-2019 season was just to qualify, to get that automatic qualification for the Olympics. But we knew with our planning and the way we structure our system and trying to make sure that 2 years from now we'll still be okay in terms of our player squad. We knew that we need to lead some of the youngsters in the World Series and give them exposure to make sure that they're ready for the Olympics in 2020. So I think at times you as a coach you almost had to tell them, guys, go out there, go make mistakes so that we can learn from those mistakes. As long as you don't make the same mistake twice, you have to go out there and make those mistakes to get your experience. But it is tough for a coach because your position is determined on the success on the field. So, but I think overall, yes, we probably could have done better in some areas or in some tournaments. But I think overall, we knew that it's going to be a different season where we to test combinations, let the guys find each other out there on the field, because training and playing is different. You can have the greatest training session, but it's not the same as in the games as well. I think you get more pressure, you get less time to make decisions. There's more unpredictability where you just don't know what the opposition is bringing to you. Where in training you always know what the opposition is going to bring you. So yeah, I think overall a challenging season, but we knew it's going to be that challenge, and I think happy with the outcome of the season where we finished fourth, and then got that automatic qualification.
For sure. And Neil, I mean, you've touched on it a little bit here, but when you're starting to rebuild a squad, and obviously you guys have certain fundamentals, you're big on culture, obviously the conditioning and that sort of thing. What are some of the most difficult things for a newcomer to adjust to? I mean, when you get a new guy coming in, what are the things that you really have to focus on to ensure, as you say, that when they're in a match situation, they might make a mistake, but they've just got to roll with it? I mean, how do you start refining those sort of fundamentals of a guy coming into the system for the first time?
Yeah, Shisha. I think sevens is one of those games that test you mentally, but also physically, but also mentally. I think one of the biggest challenges for players, especially coming from 15s or guys coming from the school, is just the work ethic in sevens. The fact that you can never stop, and it's something that we really work hard on to almost create that work ethic on the players or the players that comes into our academy, and then obviously go on to play in the senior side. And then I think the other thing it's very difficult for players is the defense, and how I now need to cover 15 meters each side of them, where in 15 so they cover say 5 or 7 meters each side of them. So that's always a challenge. And if you get a 102k Fijian running at you, but he's got the stepping ability of a Stetman Gans or Branko de Pre, then it's difficult to defend that. And for them to understand, it's not individual one-on-one defense, but it's a system. So you're going to get beaten, but the system needs to actually help you out if you get beaten. So if you stick to your roles and responsibilities in the system, then the system will help you out. And I think that's sometimes what frustrates the people when they listen to the interview, and we always refers back to the system, but there's no other way that you can actually defend in sevens other than a system, because one-on-one you're always going to get beaten, but that system needs to sort it out. So I'll say, and then the mental toughness side as well. So it almost go hand in hand with the work ethic, but just that mentality to keep pushing, and when your body almost gives up or surrenders, or you think you're done now, there's still 20 or 30% left that you can give to the team, and that mental side is a big part of it, especially in sevens where you play three games a day. You might lose your second game and then have a very important third game to make it to the quarterfinal. So, and that's 2 hours later. So you must almost put that disappointment behind you and then get yourself ready for the next game again. So it's very much an emotional roller coaster through, well, basically the whole 2 days, day 1 and day 2.
Sure. And Neil, maybe a question that is a little bit difficult to answer, but as you say, I mean, a lot of the times you refer back to the system when it comes to defense and certain things that you guys are doing on the field. But when it comes to off the field, I mean, we often hear you speak of culture, and the players always refer back to the culture of the seven setup. How would you define it? I mean, what are the things that are important in that culture for you guys to have the sort of group unity you want? And you know, it's obviously not a big group. Like if guys are come from 15s, they're used to a big squad. You're a small group. It's almost like I mean, that kind of cliche of the family environment is used a lot. But how would you define it?
Yeah. I almost want to use that cliche again and say it's definitely a brotherhood that the guys are really looking after each other, not just on the field, but off the field as well. And I think you mentioned it as well. I think some of the factors that contribute to this culture is the fact that we're a much smaller group than with 15s. I think it's 60 guys, and in that player corps of 60, you'll get small cliques and small groups with inside that 60. But with us, because you're such a small group, it's only that one group. There's no little small cliques with inside that group. So the biggest squad might be about 24, 28 players, but when you go on tour, it's only 13 players, and I don't think there's enough numbers to form 2 groups or 2 cliques with inside that group. And I think the second thing that definitely contributes to this culture is the fact that we stay together, we travel together for almost the full year, and just that time that we spend with each other, you know exactly when to push the boundaries a little bit and keep making jokes with somebody, and then you also know okay, I need to back off now because he's a little bit irritated. So you get to know the guys inside out, and I think that definitely contributes and to the culture, and I think it's something that started already with Paul True when he was the coach. So culture is not built over 1 season or 2 seasons even. It's something that evolves the whole time, even with new players coming in. I can remember we started a bit of a culture when I was still a player. Then a guy like Robert Everson and Philip Snyman came into the system, and Walton Peterson, and I think Lionel Mapu was also that same year that came into the system, and they almost changed the culture a little bit because it's a new generation of kids coming into the system, and they do things differently and in a different way. But now you need to get them to buy into our culture, but you can't just get them 100% to our side. We needed to make a 10% step to their side as well. So it's always a give and take in this culture system. And I think that's also important with the new generation, the millennials or the Generation X or whatever they call them. You can't just expect them to make 100% step in your direction to fit into your culture. You also need a bit of a step to them to make sure that you find each other somewhere there in the middle, but they're probably a little bit more to your side, but you need to also give a step to their side as well, to make sure that they can see that you're also willing to change a little bit, to commit and help them to fit into this culture. But I think the most important thing for me about this culture is the fact that the guys live the culture. We can talk about values, and we can write those values down and put it on paper and put it on the wall there in the office and in our workplace. But if you don't live those cultures, or those values, it's not a culture.
For sure. Neil, then just turning to the new season coming into 2019-2020. I mean, as you mentioned, you had some new guys coming in and out as they went back to 15s, and obviously the bigger picture at the start of the season would have been the thoughts of the Olympics. Just tell me how you went into the new season, the planning, the thoughts that were going into it and into your squad. And then you started off with an amazing win in Dubai. Just tell me about how you started off and the confidence levels at that point.
Oh, yes, to be honest, I think that obviously contributed to the big disappointment of the Olympics being postponed. We really felt like we had a great plan going into the Olympics with those obviously 15 players coming in, like Ruan and Ciabello and Roscoe and Dylan Sage and all those guys, and also with the squad that we have, the currently contracted squad of 7 players. And I think we did a massive amount of work behind the scenes to really get that plan as close as possible to perfect. I know even myself and Ashley even went over to Japan last year, July, to go and see exactly what it's like, what's the temperature like, what's the climate like, where can we stay. We even went to Kagoshima, which is in the south of Japan, where the Boks had their camp as well. And they were keen to get us in before the Olympics as well, and host us for our preparation. So we went to Kagoshima as well, had a look at all the facilities. So I felt like we had a really good plan going into the season, and then obviously preparing for the Olympics. I think then obviously spoke to those 15 players a long time ago. We knew it's going to be Olympics 2020, and even when guys like Ruan and Ciabello and all those guys left to go and play 15s, and that was, I think, in the beginning of 2018, we told them that we would like to get them back for the Olympics. So it wasn't something that was dropped onto them. We definitely planned it, and they knew when they left the 7 system that we would like to get them back for the Olympics. So then obviously the Super Rugby season makes it difficult, because they would obviously not like to miss some Super Rugby games, but they still want to play 7s. And it's always a big negotiation with the unions when we can get those players released, because they also value their off season very much, where they do a lot of planning. They do, and obviously their type of conditioning as well, where that's the other thing between the 15s and the 7s, where we would like to get the guys to run a lot more. The 15s want the guys to bulk up a lot more and spend more time in the gym in the off season. So that clashes a little bit when we talk about getting the 15s players in, and we try to let the S&C coaches from the different systems talk to each other to make sure that when those 15s players with the 7s, they do what is needed for their 15s career and for their 15th season, and when they were the 15s, that they maybe run a little bit more in season to make sure that they fit enough when they come back to 7. So but yeah, so I think it was a good plan. We even had a plan to rest a lot of players for the Los Angeles, Vancouver tournaments, so that we don't get to July, to the Olympics, and then the guys are tired of rugby. We saw it when the guys get to the end of the season. You can see the performances and the efforts going down a little bit because of just too much rugby through the year and all the traveling as well. So our plan was to even rest quite a few players, and almost then again develop the next generation of 7s players, expose them to the World Series, and make sure that when 2020 is over, that we then have a group of players that played about 3 or 4 or 5 World Series tournaments, but are not yet there where we want them, but at least they got some exposure to the World Series, and then use Hong Kong, Singapore, Paris, London to build up for the Olympics, and to try to get our squad together as much as possible that we think will take us to the Olympics. So I think a very detailed plan that we had for Olympics. So I think disappointment was quite big when we heard that they postponed the Olympics for the year. And I mean, we spoke to Cheslin. Cheslin also knew. I even told him on his wedding 3 years before the Olympics that we would like him to come play Olympics. And now, unfortunately, if the Olympics is taking place in July and the British and Irish Lions tour is still in July, then obviously it's at the same time, and we probably won't get our hands on Cheslin or anybody that's going to be in that Springbok squad.
Into the final strike.